In 47 seconds, the elevator plummeted 3 floors. 24 hours later, Maya Chen received an invitation that would change everything. But first, there was the morning, ordinary as toast, predictable as her grandmother's old alarm clock that still rang at 5:30 a.m. sharp. Maya Chen adjusted her second-hand scrubs in the hospital locker room mirror, the pale blue fabric soft from countless washes, but still professional enough to pass inspection. Her reflection showed what she'd grown accustomed to seeing, a 26-year-old woman with tired eyes and determined shoulders, student loan debt weighing heavier than her stethoscope. She pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over the banking app before opening it with practiced resignation. $127,000 remaining. The number never seemed to shrink fast enough, no matter how many extra shifts she picked up or how carefully she budgeted every dollar. Growing up in her grandmother's cramped apartment above Chen's laundromat had taught Maya to stretch resources like taffy, making meals from leftover rice and vegetables that customers forgot in their pockets, wearing clothes until they fell apart, studying under the neon open sign because it was brighter than their single overhead bulb. The laundromat had been Maya's entire world for the first 18 years of her life. Nai, grandmother in the Mandarin that Maya spoke better than English until kindergarten, had worked 14-hour days washing other people's clothes while raising Maya alone. Maya's mother had died in a car accident when Maya was 3, leaving behind only photographs and a medical debt that followed them like a shadow. Her father, broken by grief and responsibility he couldn't handle, had disappeared when Maya was 5, reappearing only occasionally with promises he never kept and bills he couldn't pay. Education is the only ladder out of poverty, Nai used to say, while folding strangers' laundry late into the night. Every grade, every test, every scholarship, that's one more step up the ladder. Maya had taken those words to heart, studying by the harsh fluorescent lights of the laundromat, doing homework on the folding tables between loads, memorizing vocabulary words to the rhythm of washing machines and dryers. When Nai was diagnosed with diabetes, then kidney disease, then the heart problems that eventually claimed her life, Maya learned about the American healthcare system from the patient side. She watched her grandmother ration insulin, skip medication doses to save money, and die slowly because treatment was expensive and dignity was a luxury they couldn't afford. It was Nai's death during Maya's senior year of high school that crystallized her decision to become a nurse, not just to honor her grandmother's memory, but to be the advocate she wished had existed for their family. Nursing school had been 4 years of relentless pressure, academic demands balanced against financial desperation, clinical rotations that revealed both the beauty and brutality of healthcare, and the growing awareness that helping people often meant navigating systems designed more for profit than compassion. Maya graduated with honors and debt that felt astronomical, a number so large it seemed fictional until the first payment notice arrived. But even now, with a steady nursing job at St. Mary's General, the bills from her father's cancer treatment continued arriving like unwelcome ghosts. He'd shown up 3 years ago, looking decades older than his 52 years, carrying a diagnosis of stage 3 lung cancer and no insurance. Maya couldn't turn away family, even family that had abandoned her. She'd signed as guarantor for his treatment, believing that love could somehow make the numbers work out. When he died 8 months later, he left behind only debts and the familiar ache of loving someone who couldn't love you back the same way. Each envelope brought new collections notices, new payment plans, new reminders that choosing medicine meant choosing debt. But Maya had made peace with that bargain years ago, watching her father waste away in a hospital bed while nurses moved like angels around him, bringing comfort when doctors brought only grim statistics. She tucked her phone away and grabbed her coffee thermos, the same dented silver one Nai had used for her factory shifts before buying the laundromat. Some traditions were worth keeping, even if they came with memories that sometimes hurt more than helped. Maya had learned to make coffee the way her grandmother had, strong enough to wake the dead, sweet enough to make bitter mornings bearable. "Morning, Frank," Maya called to the security guard as she passed his desk, setting down a second cup of coffee she'd brought from home. Frank Washington was 63 years old, arthritic hands that struggled with simple tasks, working security because his pension hadn't stretched as far as his retirement dreams. Maya had learned that small kindnesses echoed through hospital halls like ripples in still water, and Frank's grateful smile was worth the extra effort of making 2 cups instead of 1. "You're too good to us, Maya," Frank smiled, accepting the cup gratefully. His uniform was always impeccably pressed, his badge polished, his dignity intact despite circumstances that would have broken lesser men. "That new intern tried to bring me coffee yesterday. Burned it so bad, I thought someone was testing fire alarms." Maya laughed, the sound genuine despite the early hour. This was why she loved nursing, despite the debt and the long hours and the administrators who treated staff like budget line items. It was the human connections, the tiny moments of care that bloomed between medical procedures and insurance paperwork. During her rounds, she always checked on Mrs. Patterson in 4B, whose children lived in Seattle and could only visit monthly. She helped Mr. Rodriguez practice English while changing his IV bag, celebrating small victories when he successfully ordered his own breakfast, in sentences that grew more confident each day. She knew which patients needed an extra pillow, which ones appreciated a joke about hospital food, and which ones just needed someone to sit quietly beside their bed while they processed bad news or good. Maya's nursing philosophy had been shaped by Nai-Nai's teachings. Treat people the way you'd want your family treated. Fight for those who can't fight for themselves, and never let bureaucracy override humanity. These principles had served her well during 4 years at St. Mary's, earning respect from colleagues and gratitude from patients, even if they didn't always align perfectly with hospital efficiency metrics. The morning progressed with comfortable routine. Blood pressure checks for Mr. Thompson in 3A, who always asked about her grandmother and remembered that Maya preferred tea to coffee, though she'd learned to love coffee out of necessity. Medication rounds that included Mrs. Chen in 2C, no relation despite the shared surname, who spoke only Mandarin and lit up when Maya could translate for confused medical students. Charting that captured not just vital signs and symptoms, but the small human details that made the difference between good care and great care. Who was worried about their pet at home? Who needed extra reassurance before procedures? Who wanted detailed explanations? And who preferred simple answers? Maya had learned to navigate the complex social ecosystem of hospital life with the same skill Nai-Nai had used to manage demanding customers and broken washing machines. She deferred to doctors while advocating for patients, supported newer nurses while learning from veterans, maintained professional boundaries while offering genuine compassion. It was a delicate balance that required constant adjustment, like tuning an instrument that was always slightly out of key. Dr. Amanda Reeves, the head of nursing, had mentioned during Maya's last evaluation that she was being considered for a charge nurse position. More responsibility, better pay, and the chance to influence patient care policies. It was exactly the kind of advancement Maya had dreamed about during those long nights studying in the laundromat, the recognition that her grandmother's sacrifices had been worthwhile. But by noon, the comfortable routine began fraying at the edges like old fabric under stress. The August heat wave had been building for days, pushing the city's power grid beyond its designed limits. Weather reports spoke of record-breaking temperatures, utility companies pleading for conservation, and rolling blackouts implemented to prevent total system collapse. Maya first noticed the strain during lunch break when the air conditioning cycled off for several minutes, leaving the break room stuffy and uncomfortable. Conversations turned to logistics. Should they send patients home early? How would extended power outages affect life support equipment? What protocols existed for complete system failures? Maintenance crews appeared in hallways like busy ants, checking electrical panels and muttering into their radios about load management and brownouts. Maya overheard snippets of concerned conversations, transformers overheating, backup generators tested multiple times, emergency protocols reviewed and revised. "Third time this week," muttered Janet Morrison, a veteran nurse who'd worked at St. Mary's for 15 years and had seen every crisis the hospital could face. She gestured toward the fluorescent lights that had been flickering intermittently since morning, creating an almost stroboscopic effect in some hallways. "My cousin works for the power company. Says they're running everything at 110% capacity just to keep up. It's like asking a marathon runner to sprint for 26 miles. Maya nodded, only half listening as she reviewed her afternoon assignments. The emergency department had been busy all morning with heat-related cases, dehydrated construction workers who'd pushed themselves too hard, elderly patients without air conditioning who'd been found confused and overheated in sweltering apartments, and a steady stream of minor injuries from people trying to escape their hot homes for cooler public spaces. The hospital's cooling system worked overtime, generators cycling on and off to manage the electrical load like a complex dance between supply and demand. During her 2 p.m. medication round, Maya overheard administrators huddled near the nurses' station, their voices carrying the particular tension that accompanied crisis management. Dr. Patricia Williams, the chief medical officer, stood at the center of the group, her usually calm demeanor showing cracks of concern. "Told us to prepare for rolling blackouts starting at 3 p.m. Backup generators tested this morning, but if the main grid fails completely. Emergency protocols. All department heads need to review evacuation procedures. Patient transfers to other facilities if necessary." The conversation dissolved into radio static and hurried footsteps, administrators scattering to their departments with clipboards and worried expressions. But Maya felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd had before her father's diagnosis, when doctors spoke in careful euphemisms and glanced at each other with meaningful looks that patients weren't supposed to understand. Something was coming, and the people in charge weren't entirely sure they were ready for it. Maya tried to focus on her patients, but the atmosphere of underlying tension was infectious. Mrs. Patterson asked if she should call her children in Seattle, worried about news reports of power outages and hospital evacuations. Mr. Rodriguez, usually cheerful during their English lessons, seemed distracted and kept asking about his family in the apartments near the hospital. Even the usually unflappable Dr. Martinez seemed on edge when Maya encountered her in the hallway around 3 p.m. "Maya, perfect timing," Dr. Martinez said, one hand supporting her lower back in the universal gesture of late pregnancy. At 9 months pregnant, she moved like someone carrying precious cargo, deliberate and careful. "I'm heading up to ultrasound for what I hope is my final appointment before this little one decides to make an appearance. Would you mind escorting me? I know it's not usually part of your duties, but with all the electrical issues today, I'd feel better having a nurse nearby." Dr. Sarah Martinez was one of Maya's favorite people at St. Mary's, a radiologist who treated every staff member with genuine respect, remembered personal details about their lives, and never pulled rank unless patient safety was at stake. She'd been Maya's supervisor during a brief rotation in radiology, and they'd developed the kind of professional friendship that made hospital work more bearable. "Of course," Maya agreed immediately. "How are you feeling? Any contractions?" "Just Braxton Hicks, I think. This baby has been doing CrossFit in there for weeks." Dr. Martinez laughed, though Maya noticed she looked tired in a way that went beyond normal pregnancy fatigue. "Tom thinks it's going to be a soccer player with all the kicking, but I'm betting on Olympic gymnastics with all the flipping around. I swear this child has been practicing aerial maneuvers." They walked slowly toward the elevator bank, Dr. Martinez pausing occasionally to catch her breath or adjust her position. Maya noticed the subtle signs she'd learned to recognize in expectant mothers. The way Dr. Martinez unconsciously cradled her belly during contractions, the slight grimace that indicated discomfort, the careful breathing that suggested she was managing more pain than she was admitting. "Any day now, right?" Maya asked as they reached the elevators. "Due date was yesterday, actually. But you know how babies are. They arrive on their own schedule, not ours. Tom has been sleeping with one eye open, convinced I'm going to go into labor at 3 a.m., and he'll have to drive like a maniac to get here in time." Maya pressed the elevator call button, noting that only one of the 3 elevators seemed to be functioning properly. The digital display showed it was currently on the 8th floor, descending slowly. "I have to admit, I'm getting nervous," Dr. Martinez confided as they waited. "I've delivered dozens of babies, coached countless women through labor, but being the patient instead of the doctor feels completely different. It's like knowing all the lyrics to a song, but suddenly having to sing solo instead of backup." The elevator finally arrived with its familiar ding, and both women stepped inside. The interior was slightly warmer than usual, and Maya noticed that the emergency lighting panel showed an amber warning light she'd never seen before. She pressed the button for the 7th floor, where the ultrasound equipment waited to capture what might be final images before delivery. "Tom keeps joking that I'll try to coach myself through labor," Dr. Martinez continued, leaning against the wall with both hands now cradling her belly. "He might be right. I've been practicing breathing exercises and reviewing pain management techniques like I'm studying for finals." Maya was about to respond with reassurance when the world went dark. Not gradually, not with warning flickering, just complete sudden blackness that swallowed everything in an instant. The elevator lurched, a sickening sensation of falling that lasted exactly 47 seconds, according to Maya's watch, before jerking to a violent stop that threw both women against the walls. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in hellish red shadows that made familiar spaces look alien and threatening. The silence that followed was deafening. No hum of air conditioning, no distant sounds of hospital activity, no electronic beeping from medical equipment. Just the sound of 2 women breathing hard in a metal box suspended somewhere between floors. "Oh no," Dr. Martinez whispered, and Maya heard something in her voice that had nothing to do with being stuck in an elevator. It was the sound of someone recognizing that their carefully laid plans were about to become irrelevant. "Are you okay?" Maya asked, reaching for her patient's arm in the dim light. Her nursing training kicked in automatically. Assess the situation, check for injuries, prioritize immediate needs. "My water just broke." The words hung in the recycled air like a curse. Maya felt Dr. Martinez grip her hand, squeezing hard enough to stop circulation, her breathing changing from normal to the deep, purposeful pattern that meant active labor. "Contractions are starting," Dr. Martinez gasped, her voice tight with concentration. 2 minutes apart, maybe less. "Maya, this baby isn't waiting for rescue." Maya's medical training kicked in automatically. Assess, prioritize, act. But her mind also raced through everything she knew about hospital policy, scope of practice, and the potential consequences of making decisions beyond her authority. She pressed the emergency call button with one hand while supporting Dr. Martinez with the other, hearing it ring once before a harried voice crackled through the speaker. "Emergency services, all elevators are currently—" "This is Maya Chen, RN, trapped in elevator car B with Dr. Sarah Martinez, who's in active labor. We need immediate assistance." Static filled the small space, punctuated by distant voices and what sounded like multiple emergency alarms. When the voice returned, it carried barely controlled panic. "All elevators are down. Stairwells are jammed with evacuees. Emergency crews are dispatched citywide. Backup generators have failed completely, and we're dealing with a total power grid collapse. We're estimating several hours before we can reach you, possibly longer." Dr. Martinez cried out, her contraction visible even through her loose medical scrubs. Maya helped her slide down the wall to a sitting position, medical training warring with hospital policy in her mind. Everything she'd learned about scope of practice, professional boundaries, and liability management seemed suddenly irrelevant in the face of new life demanding to enter the world. "Maya," Dr. Martinez panted, when the contraction passed, sweat beading on her forehead despite the elevator's cooling temperature. "I need you to check my cervix. I think I'm fully dilated." Maya's hands shook as she helped Dr. Martinez position herself, pulling on examination gloves from the small supply she always carried. Through the gloves, she felt what she'd been dreading. The baby was crowning, the cervix completely effaced, delivery imminent, whether they were ready or not. "I can't do this," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant sounds of emergency sirens. "I'm not authorized to deliver babies without physician supervision. Hospital policy clearly states that nurses cannot perform procedures outside their scope of practice, especially obstetric procedures. If something goes wrong—" "Forget policy!" Dr. Martinez grabbed Maya's wrist with surprising strength. "You've assisted in dozens of deliveries. I've watched you work. You're better than half the residents we get. More intuitive, more careful. This baby is coming whether we follow protocol or not." Maya stared at Dr. Martinez in the red emergency lighting, seeing both patient and colleague, both the woman who needed help and the doctor who understood exactly what was being asked. Every rule she'd learned, every protocol that governed her profession, every boundary that defined her scope of practice, all of it seemed suddenly irrelevant in the face of a new life demanding to enter the world. "Okay," Maya said, her voice steadier than her hands. "Okay, we're going to do this." She quickly assessed their supplies. The elevator's emergency kit contained basic first aid materials, a small blanket, bottled water, and some gauze pads. Not ideal, but workable. Maya removed her cardigan and spread it on the floor, then helped Dr. Martinez lie back in the most comfortable position possible, given the cramped space. "Tell me what you need," Dr. Martinez said between contractions, her medical training allowing her to separate her professional knowledge from her personal experience. "I need you to trust me," Maya replied, positioning herself to catch the baby. "And I need you to push when I tell you to push, rest when I tell you to rest, and breathe through everything else." For the next 38 minutes, Maya forgot about hospital policies and nursing hierarchies and student loan debt. There was only the sacred work of bringing life safely into the world, guided by instinct and training and the fierce determination to do no harm. She coached Dr. Martinez through each contraction, monitored the baby's position, and prepared for complications that could arise without warning. When the umbilical cord wrapped around the baby's neck, a potentially life-threatening complication called nuchal cord, Maya carefully loosened it with steady hands, her movements precise despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. When Dr. Martinez lost strength during transition, the most intense phase of labor, Maya coached her through each breath, each push, each moment of doubt. "I can see the head," Maya announced, her voice filled with wonder despite the circumstances. "One more push, Sarah, one more big push." At 4:23 p.m., as sirens wailed in the distance and emergency crews hammered on elevator doors throughout the hospital, baby Emma Martinez took her first breath in elevator car B. Maya caught her perfectly, a slippery, screaming miracle that immediately began looking for her mother's voice with the ancient wisdom of newborns everywhere. "She's beautiful," Maya whispered, using her own shoelaces to tie off the umbilical cord before placing the baby on Dr. Martinez's chest. "She's absolutely perfect." Dr. Martinez was crying and laughing simultaneously, holding her daughter while Maya monitored both patients for signs of distress. The baby's cry was strong and healthy, her color good, her reflexes normal. Dr. Martinez's bleeding was within normal parameters, her vital signs stable, her emotional state euphoric despite the circumstances. When rescue finally arrived 3 hours later, firefighters who'd climbed 7 flights of stairs and rappelled down the elevator shaft, they found mother and baby stable, comfortable, and bonding peacefully while Maya maintained watch like a guardian angel in scrubs. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of interviews, paperwork, and unexpected media attention. Maya had expected a quiet commendation, maybe a mention in the hospital newsletter, perhaps a small celebration with her colleagues. Instead, she found herself facing news cameras and reporters who'd turned the elevator delivery into a human interest story about heroism during crisis. "A nurse delivers baby in elevator during blackout crisis," read the morning headlines in papers across the city. Local television stations showed grainy security footage of Maya entering the elevator, then interviewed Dr. Martinez from her hospital bed. Baby Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms like an advertisement for successful medical intervention. "Maya Chen saved our lives," Dr. Martinez told reporters, her voice strong despite her exhaustion. "She remained calm under impossible circumstances and provided expert medical care when no one else could reach us. She made decisions that required not just technical skill, but courage and judgment. She's a hero." The interviews were surreal for Maya, who'd never been on television and found the attention both flattering and overwhelming. Reporters asked about her background, her training, her thoughts during the delivery. They wanted to know about her childhood, her grandmother, her motivation for becoming a nurse. They painted a picture of small-town values and big-city dedication, the American dream realized through hard work and compassion. But heroes, Maya learned, were not always welcome in institutional medicine. The call came at 7 a.m. the next morning, before Maya had even finished her first cup of coffee or fully processed the strange experience of seeing herself on the morning news. Chief of Staff Dr. Robert Hartwell's voice was professionally polite and personally distant, carrying the tone that administrators used when delivering bad news with legal precision. "Miss Chen, please report to my office at 9 a.m. sharp. Bring your union representative." Maya's stomach dropped like a broken elevator. In her 4 years at St. Mary's, she'd never been summoned to the Chief of Staff's office. Nurses dealt with the head of nursing, occasionally the Chief Medical Officer. But the Chief of Staff only got involved when situations reached the level of serious institutional concern. She called her union representative, Jennifer Walsh, who agreed to meet her with obvious reluctance in her voice. "I've already heard rumblings," Jennifer warned over the phone, her usual optimism replaced by professional caution. "Administration is concerned about liability. They're calling it unauthorized medical practice and exceeding scope of authority. Maya, I have to ask, did you really deliver a baby without physician supervision?" "I saved 2 lives," Maya replied, but she could hear how defensive she sounded, how the simple statement of fact carried undertones of doubt and worry. "I know, and I'm proud of you. Every nurse in the city is proud of you. But the hospital's lawyers are having fits about potential lawsuits. What if something had gone wrong? What if the mother or baby had been injured while you were acting outside your scope of practice? They're looking at millions in liability exposure." Maya arrived at Dr. Hartwell's office to find a tribunal waiting. The Chief of Staff behind his imposing desk, the head of nursing with a stack of policy manuals, a woman from legal affairs she'd never seen before, and someone from risk management who kept shuffling papers nervously like a dealer preparing for a high-stakes game. Jennifer Walsh sat beside Maya, her expression grim but determined. The office was intimidatingly formal. Mahogany furniture, medical diplomas covering one wall, awards and commendations that spoke to Dr. Hartwell's distinguished career. Maya felt small in the leather chair, aware that her scrubs marked her as working class in a room designed to project authority and success. "Miss Chen," Dr. Hartwell began without preamble, consulting a thick file that Maya assumed contained her personnel records, "while we appreciate your initiative during yesterday's emergency, you violated multiple hospital protocols. You performed medical procedures outside your scope of practice without physician authorization. You made decisions that, while well-intentioned, exposed this institution to significant legal liability." The legal affairs representative leaned forward, her voice crisp and unsympathetic, delivering words that sounded rehearsed and legally vetted. "Our insurance carriers have been contacted by several medical malpractice attorneys who specialize in scope of practice violations. They're suggesting that your actions, however heroic they may appear, constitute unauthorized practice of medicine." But nothing went wrong, Maya protested, her voice carrying the frustration of someone who'd done everything right and was being punished for it. Both patients are healthy. I followed proper procedures as much as possible under the circumstances. I made the best decisions I could with the information and resources available. That's not the point, the head of nursing interjected, her tone suggesting that Maya was missing something fundamental about institutional liability. Policy exists for a reason. If we allow nurses to make independent medical decisions during emergencies, where does it end? Who determines what constitutes an emergency? Who accepts responsibility when something goes wrong? Maya felt the walls closing in around her career, her future, her identity as a healthcare professional. Dr. Martinez can testify that I saved her life. Her baby might have died without intervention. Dr. Martinez's testimony is noted, Dr. Hartwell said, consulting his papers with the air of someone following a script. However, our legal counsel advises that gratitude doesn't override professional boundaries. You'll receive a formal reprimand, mandatory retraining on scope of practice limitations, and immediate suspension pending full investigation by our Medical Ethics Board. Jennifer Walsh spoke for the first time, her union training evident in her careful phrasing. This seems excessive given the life-threatening circumstances and the successful outcome. What seems excessive? The risk management representative replied, shuffling through papers that Maya suspected contained financial projections and liability assessments, is the potential lawsuit exposure. We have preliminary communications from attorneys representing concerned medical professionals who question whether Ms. Chen's actions set dangerous precedents for nursing practice. Maya left the meeting in a daze, her hospital ID temporarily deactivated, her keycard access suspended, her career suddenly hanging by a thread she couldn't see. The same news stations that had celebrated her heroism now featured interviews with medical professionals who questioned her judgment, her training, her right to make decisions that traditionally belonged to physicians. Dr. Amanda Foster, a prominent obstetrician with 3 decades of experience and a medical practice that served some of the city's wealthiest families, appeared on the evening news with concerns about dangerous cowboy behavior among nurses who might be inspired by Maya's example. While Miss Chen's intentions were undoubtedly good, Dr. Foster explained to the cameras with the authority of someone accustomed to being quoted, medical licensing exists to protect patients from well-meaning but potentially harmful interventions. Nurses receive excellent training within their scope of practice, but delivering babies requires specialized knowledge and experience that comes only through medical school, residency, and board certification. Social media exploded with debate that revealed deep divisions within the medical community. Medical Twitter dissected every detail of Maya's decisions, with hashtags like #NurseOverreach trending alongside #HeroicCare. Patient advocacy groups praised her courage, while professional medical associations questioned the precedent her actions might set for scope of practice enforcement. Maya watched her reputation fracture in real time, each news cycle bringing fresh criticism and analysis. The woman who had received flowers and thank you cards from grateful patients now found herself portrayed as a reckless rule breaker who'd gotten lucky that nothing had gone wrong. The stories multiplied and mutated as they spread. Maya had acted without any medical training. Maya had endangered both patients. Maya had been seeking attention and glory. The truth that she'd made careful, informed decisions under extraordinary circumstances became lost in the narrative of institutional liability and professional boundaries. 3 weeks later, the termination letter arrived on official hospital letterhead, signed by Dr. Hartwell and the hospital's board of directors. The language was formal and final. Immediate termination for violation of scope of practice protocols, failure to follow established emergency procedures, and actions that expose the institution to unacceptable liability risks. Worse than losing her job was the investigation launched by the state nursing board. Their letter, arriving 2 days after her termination, used phrases like unauthorized medical practice and potential license suspension that made Maya's hands shake as she read. Without her nursing license, she couldn't work in healthcare anywhere. 4 years of education, 4 years of experience, thousands of patients helped. All of it could disappear because she'd chosen to save lives instead of follow protocols. Job applications to other hospitals were rejected before interviews could be scheduled. Her story had spread throughout the medical community, and Maya discovered that being labeled a liability risk was professional death in healthcare. Human resources departments wouldn't return her calls. Nursing agencies politely suggested she wait for the board investigation to conclude before seeking new employment. Maya moved back into her grandmother's old apartment above the laundromat, the rent cheap enough to manage on unemployment benefits and the small savings she'd accumulated. The familiar smells of detergent and fabric softener brought both comfort and shame. She was 26 years old with a nursing degree and 4 years of experience, living in the same 2-bedroom apartment where she'd done homework by neon light as a child. The apartment hadn't changed much since Nai-Nai's death. The same mismatched furniture, the same view of the alley behind the building, the same sounds of the city that had been the soundtrack to Maya's childhood. She found herself following her grandmother's old routines, making strong coffee in the morning, listening to the washing machines and dryers, wondering if this was where her story would end. She found work at a retail clinic inside a pharmacy, taking blood pressures and giving flu shots for $12 an hour. The work was mind-numbing after the intensity of hospital nursing, checking boxes on forms, following scripts for patient interactions, dealing with insurance authorizations for routine procedures. But it paid enough to cover rent and the legal fees that mounted as her attorney prepared her defense for the nursing board hearing. Every night, Maya checked Dr. Martinez's social media accounts, watching baby Emma grow through carefully curated photos and updates. Emma's first smile at 6 weeks, her curious eyes tracking mobiles and toys, her determined attempts to roll over. Each milestone felt like vindication. This healthy, thriving baby was proof that Maya's decisions had been correct, even if the institutional response suggested otherwise. But vindication didn't pay bills or restore careers. Maya's lawyer, a tired-looking man named Richard Gonzalez, who specialized in professional licensing disputes, suggested accepting a plea agreement that would place permanent restrictions on her nursing practice. "You'd keep your license," he explained during their consultation in his cramped office above a bail bondsman, "but you'd be prohibited from working in emergency or obstetric settings. No intensive care, no trauma units, no situations where you might be tempted to exceed your scope again." "So I'd be a licensed nurse who can't actually practice nursing," Maya replied bitterly. "You'd be employed, which is more than you have now." Maya was still considering the plea agreement when everything changed. Exactly 24 hours after signing her termination papers, Maya found an elegant envelope slipped under her apartment door. The paper was cream-colored and expensive, her name written in elegant calligraphy across the front. Inside, embossed letterhead announced the sender, Marcus Chen, Chief Executive Officer, Chen Foundation for Medical Innovation. The invitation was formal but personal. Your courage in Elevator Car B saved not just 2 lives, but inspired a vision for healthcare's future. Join me tomorrow at 7 p.m. to discuss how we can ensure no nurse faces punishment for choosing compassion over bureaucracy. The Four Seasons Hotel, Presidential Suite. Your travel and accommodation expenses are covered. Maya stared at the invitation, reading it 3 times before the words fully registered. Marcus Chen, she'd heard the name but couldn't place it immediately. She Googled him on her phone, scrolling through articles and profiles that painted a picture of a tech billionaire who'd revolutionized emergency medical systems after losing his daughter to delayed hospital care. Marcus Chen had sold his first company at 28 and used the proceeds to develop faster emergency response protocols. His daughter Emma had died at age 7 from complications during an asthma attack, delayed by communication failures between paramedics and hospital staff. Since then, Chen had donated hundreds of millions to healthcare reform, establishing training programs, funding research, and advocating for systemic changes that prioritized patient outcomes over institutional liability. The more Maya read, the more intrigued she became. Chen's foundation had quietly supported dozens of healthcare workers who'd faced professional retaliation for patient advocacy. He'd funded legal defenses for nurses who'd reported unsafe conditions, doctors who'd blown whistles on medical fraud, and administrators who'd prioritized patient care over profit margins. Maya called the number on the invitation, reaching an assistant who confirmed travel arrangements and assured her that Mr. Chen was very much looking forward to meeting her. The assistant mentioned, almost casually, that Mr. Chen had been following her story since the blackout. The next evening, Maya found herself in an elevator, this one functioning perfectly, ascending to the presidential suite of the Four Seasons Hotel. She'd borrowed a professional dress from her neighbor and spent her last $20 on a cab, unsure what to expect, but certain that this meeting would determine her future one way or another. Marcus Chen was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 40, with graying temples and kind eyes that immediately put her at ease. The suite was elegantly appointed, but comfortable, more like a sophisticated living room than a formal business setting. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city where Maya had grown up, worked, and had her career destroyed. "Maya," he said, extending his hand warmly, "thank you for coming. I know this has been an incredibly difficult time for you." They settled into comfortable chairs overlooking the city, where evening lights were beginning to twinkle in the summer twilight. Marcus poured tea from an expensive service, his movements deliberate and thoughtful. "I want to tell you why I asked you here," he began, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience. "Dr. Sarah Martinez is my niece. Her husband, Tom, is my brother-in-law. When Sarah called me from the hospital after Emma was born, she couldn't stop talking about the nurse who'd saved their lives." Maya felt her breath catch. The connection she hadn't made suddenly became clear. "I lost my daughter Emma 7 years ago," Marcus continued, his voice steady but weighted with old grief. "She died because trained medical professionals followed protocol instead of following their instincts. Paramedics waited for authorization to transport her to a better-equipped hospital. Emergency room staff delayed treatment while confirming insurance coverage. Everyone followed the rules perfectly, and my daughter died because no one was willing to break them when breaking them would have saved her life." He set down his teacup and looked directly at Maya. "You did what they wouldn't do. You chose human life over institutional fear. You made the right decision in an impossible situation, and instead of being celebrated, you're being punished for it." "I'm not sure what you want me to say," Maya replied carefully. "I did what any nurse would have done." "No," Marcus shook his head. "Most nurses would have followed protocol and waited for rescue, even if it meant risking 2 lives. You broke the rules because the rules were wrong in that moment. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need to revolutionize healthcare." Marcus reached for a leather portfolio on the side table, extracting documents that he spread between them like a poker player revealing a winning hand. "I want to offer you something unprecedented," he said. "A $2 million grant to establish your own emergency medical training center, plus full legal support to restore your nursing license and pursue wrongful termination litigation against St. Mary's Hospital." Maya stared at the papers, unable to process what she was hearing. The numbers seemed fictional, the opportunity too vast to comprehend. "The Marcus Chen Institute for Emergency Medical Ethics," Marcus continued, pointing to architectural drawings and budget projections, "would train healthcare workers to make life-saving decisions during crisis situations. You'd develop protocols that prioritize patient outcomes over liability concerns. Create simulation training that prepares medical professionals for situations where standard procedures don't apply." He pointed to specific sections of the contract, his finger tracing lines of text that outlined Maya's future in terms she'd never imagined possible. "Full salary and benefits for you as director, plus funding for staff, equipment, and research. We'd also establish a legal defense fund for healthcare workers who face professional retaliation for patient advocacy. I don't understand, Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. Why me? Why this much money? Marcus smiled sadly, his expression carrying the weight of memories that never quite healed. Because you did for Sarah and Emma what no one was willing to do for my Emma. You proved that sometimes the right medical decision is the one that breaks the rules. And because the baby who took her first breath in that elevator was named Emma Martinez, after my daughter. Maya felt tears building in her eyes. Dr. Martinez named her baby after your daughter? Sarah didn't know about Emma when she chose the name, Marcus explained, his voice soft with wonder. She just liked it, but when she told me later, it felt like a sign that something beautiful could come from all this pain. Like Emma was somehow involved in bringing new life into the world, even though she's been gone for 7 years. Maya studied the contract through blurry vision, trying to comprehend the opportunity being offered. $2 million to build something meaningful from her professional destruction. Legal support to fight back against the system that had discarded her. The chance to ensure other healthcare workers wouldn't face the same impossible choice between saving lives and saving careers. There's more, Marcus said gently, producing additional documents. We're also discussing a documentary about your story, a book deal with a major publisher, and testimony before Congress about healthcare worker protections. This isn't just about restoring your career, it's about changing the entire system. Maya set down the contract, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was being offered. I need to ask, she said carefully, what do you get out of this? This is an enormous investment in one person's story. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the city lights that sparkled like scattered stars. I get the chance to honor my daughter's memory by preventing other children from dying because healthcare workers are too afraid to act, he finally answered. I get to transform one person's courage into systemic change that could save thousands of lives. And I get to prove that sometimes the best investment isn't in technology or equipment. It's in people who have the wisdom to know when rules should be broken. Maya signed the contract that night, her signature shaky but determined. The pen felt heavy in her hand, weighted with possibility and responsibility she'd never imagined carrying. Within a week, her legal team had filed wrongful termination suits against St. Mary's Hospital and initiated proceedings to clear her nursing license. The story that had destroyed her career became the foundation for rebuilding it stronger than before. The legal proceedings were swift and decisive. Marcus Chen's lawyers were the kind that hospitals feared, experienced, well-funded, and absolutely committed to their client's cause. They presented evidence of Maya's exemplary record, expert testimony about the appropriateness of her actions, and compelling arguments about the dangerous precedent of punishing healthcare workers for life-saving decisions made during emergencies. St. Mary's Hospital settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, along with a public apology and agreement to revise their emergency protocols. The nursing board dismissed all charges against Maya, citing extraordinary circumstances and exemplary professional judgment under duress. But Maya's vindication was only the beginning. 6 months later, Maya stood in the witness box before a congressional subcommittee on healthcare regulation, her voice steady as she testified about the need for Good Samaritan protections for medical professionals. The hearing room was packed with reporters, healthcare advocates, and medical professionals who had followed her story from elevator heroics to legislative testimony. Healthcare workers shouldn't have to choose between saving lives and saving careers, she told the lawmakers, looking directly at each committee member as she spoke. We need legal protections for reasonable life-saving decisions made during emergency situations. The Maya Chen Emergency Care Act would provide those protections while maintaining appropriate oversight and accountability. Senator Patricia Williams, the committee chair, leaned forward with interest. Ms. Chen, can you give us specific examples of how current policies might prevent healthcare workers from providing optimal patient care? Maya had prepared for this question, drawing on months of research and consultation with healthcare workers across the country. Senator? Imagine a nurse who witnesses a patient choking in a hospital cafeteria. Current scope of practice regulations might technically prohibit that nurse from performing a tracheotomy, even if it's the only way to save the patient's life. Or consider a paramedic who encounters a car accident victim with a collapsed lung. Existing protocols might require waiting for physician authorization before performing a potentially life-saving procedure. The examples were compelling, and Maya watched the committee members taking notes, asking follow-up questions, engaging with the fundamental issue of balancing professional boundaries with emergency medical needs. The legislation I'm proposing, Maya continued, would protect healthcare workers who make reasonable, life-saving decisions during true emergency situations while maintaining existing oversight for non-emergency procedures. It's not about eliminating professional boundaries, it's about recognizing that emergency medicine sometimes requires emergency thinking. The Maya Chen Emergency Care Act passed unanimously, supported by patient advocacy groups, medical professionals, and healthcare institutions that had learned to value adaptability over rigid adherence to protocol. Maya watched from the gallery as senators cast their votes, each eye representing validation not just of her specific actions, but of the principle that saving lives should take precedence over following rules. The Marcus Chen Institute for Emergency Medical Ethics opened in a renovated medical building downtown, equipped with state-of-the-art simulation labs and training facilities that could replicate virtually any emergency scenario. Maya's staff included experienced emergency nurses, paramedics, and physicians who shared her belief that good medicine sometimes required good judgment over good documentation. The building itself was a testament to thoughtful design and unlimited funding. Training rooms equipped with mannequins that could simulate every type of medical emergency, from cardiac arrest to complicated deliveries. Virtual reality systems that place trainees in high-stress scenarios without real-world consequences. Conference rooms where healthcare workers could discuss ethical dilemmas and practice making difficult decisions under pressure. In the first year, they certified 200 healthcare workers in emergency obstetric care, trauma response, and crisis decision-making. Hospitals across the country began sending staff for training, and medical schools incorporated the Institute's curricula into their emergency medicine rotations. Maya's office was on the top floor, with windows overlooking the city where her career had been destroyed and rebuilt. She kept a photo of baby Emma Martinez on her desk, now a healthy, curious 6-month-old whose first breath in a dark elevator had sparked a revolution in emergency medical care. Dr. Martinez visited regularly, bringing Emma to show off new milestones and expressing gratitude that never seemed to diminish. During one visit, as Emma gurgled happily in Maya's arms, Dr. Martinez reflected on how their lives had all been changed by those 47 seconds of falling. She's going to grow up in a world where nurses like you don't get punished for saving lives, Dr. Martinez said, watching her daughter grab at colorful toys in the Institute's family room. That's the best gift you could have given her. Maya picked up Emma, marveling at how much the baby had grown since that terrifying afternoon in elevator car B. Emma's dark eyes were bright with intelligence and curiosity, her tiny hands reaching for everything within grasp. I think she's going to be trouble, Maya laughed, tickling Emma's chin and eliciting a delighted squeal. The best kind of trouble, Dr. Martinez agreed. The kind that changes everything for the better. Maya's transformation from disgraced nurse to healthcare reform advocate had been swift but hard-earned. She still woke up some mornings expecting to see termination letters and legal threats. Instead, she found emails from nurses across the country who'd been empowered to make life-saving decisions without fear of professional retaliation. The foundation now managed $50 million in funding, supporting everything from emergency response research to legal advocacy for healthcare workers. Maya had testified before medical boards, spoken at nursing conferences, and been featured in documentary films about healthcare reform. Her memoir, 47 Seconds: How an Elevator Changed Healthcare, became a bestseller, with proceeds funding scholarships for nursing students from low-income backgrounds. The book tour took her to hospitals, universities, and medical conferences across the country, where she shared her story and advocated for systemic changes in healthcare policy. But her favorite part of each week remained her Thursday visits to St. Mary's Hospital, where she'd been quietly reinstated as a consulting nurse for emergency protocols. The same administrators who'd terminated her now sought her expertise in developing policies that balanced patient safety with appropriate professional boundaries. The irony wasn't lost on Maya. The hospital that had fired her for exceeding her scope of practice now paid her consulting fees to help other nurses make similar decisions safely. Dr. Hartwell, who had delivered her termination, now introduced her at medical conferences as a visionary who forced us to rethink our approach to emergency medicine. Frank, the security guard, still accepted her morning coffee offerings, though now he also asked for her autograph for his granddaughter, who wanted to become a nurse. "You know what I like best about this whole story," Frank said one morning, sipping his coffee while Maya signed a well-worn copy of her memoir. "What's that?" "You proved that doing the right thing isn't always about following the rules. Sometimes it's about being brave enough to break them when breaking them saves lives." Maya smiled, thinking about baby Emma and all the other lives that had been touched by those 47 seconds in a falling elevator. She'd learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was the decision to act despite fear, to choose compassion over convenience, to prioritize human life over institutional liability. The girl who'd once calculated student loan payments in hospital locker rooms now managed budgets in the millions. But she'd never forgotten the lesson learned in that dark elevator. Sometimes the most important medical decisions happen in moments when protocols fail and humanity must step forward. Marcus Chen visited the institute regularly, often bringing updates about other healthcare workers his foundation was supporting. During one visit, he found Maya in the simulation lab, coaching a group of nurses through a complicated emergency delivery scenario. "Any regrets?" he asked afterward as they watched the trainees debrief their performance. Maya considered the question seriously. Her life had been completely transformed by those 47 seconds. Her career destroyed and rebuilt, her purpose clarified and expanded, her impact multiplied beyond anything she could have imagined. "No regrets," she said finally. "If I hadn't been in that elevator with Dr. Martinez, Emma might not have survived. If the hospital hadn't fired me, we wouldn't have built this institute. If Marcus Chen hadn't lost his daughter, none of this would exist. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us create opportunities for the best things we can do." As Maya walked through the Institute's training facilities that evening, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and orange, she carried with her the weight and wonder of that August afternoon when everything changed. In 47 seconds of falling, she discovered that sometimes you have to risk everything to save anything, and that the invitation to change the world often comes disguised as catastrophe, wrapped in darkness, and delivered precisely when you think your story is ending. But Maya's story was far from over. Each day brought new opportunities to train healthcare workers, advocate for policy changes, and ensure that the next nurse facing an impossible choice would have the support and protection Maya had ultimately found. The Institute's waiting room displayed a simple plaque that visitors often stopped to read. "In memory of Emma Chen and in honor of Emma Martinez," proof that sometimes the most important medical interventions happen between floors, beyond protocols, and within the hearts of those brave enough to choose life over liability. As evening settled over the city, Maya remained in her office, reviewing applications from healthcare workers seeking training, reading thank you letters from patients whose lives had been saved by Institute graduates, and planning for the expansion that would bring emergency medical ethics training to hospitals across the country. The invitation that had changed everything still sat framed on her desk, a reminder that sometimes salvation arrives precisely when hope seems lost. Maya Chen had learned that 47 seconds could be long enough to fall, long enough to deliver new life, and long enough to discover that your greatest professional disaster might actually be your most important calling. The elevator that had trapped her had ultimately set her free from limitations she'd never questioned, free from a system that valued compliance over compassion, and free to build something better for the healthcare workers who would face impossible choices in the years to come. In 47 seconds, Maya Chen had learned to fly,